6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
How about we do it again?
6, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. I think I bought it.
Okay, let's try one more
I
time.
definitely.
Ready?
Making review. Making review. Making review.
Say 6,
6,
5,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the season premiere of Rank and Review, the 10th season of Rank and Review. Oh my goodness. Mr. Jason Dubray, he of the Shelf Shedding Movie Show, is here to discuss with me films on the subject of alien abduction. It's a very paranoid sort of genre, a very obviously conspiracy theory kind of genre, a very fun genre, but a genre that I'm going to argue you do not need to be a believer in to be an enjoyer of. As usual, you should go into the podcast expecting there to be spoilers for the 6 movies being reviewed and ranked, and expect some coarse language, usually from me, but sometimes from my guest. If you have feedback, you can send that to ranknreview@gmail.com. That's ranknreview@gmail.com. The website is ranknreview.ca. And do check out Jason Dubray's podcast, The Shelf Shedding Movie Show, because there's that annoying 2-week gap I have between episodes, and you need something to plug into your ears. Jason is a good option. Now let's talk about little green men, little gray men, big black eyes, little gray fingers, alien abduction. Mr. Jason Dubray is joining me, he of the Shelf Shedding Movie Show. Thank you ever so much for coming back to Rank and Review. We're going to talk about alien abduction, which is a strangely specific kind of genre, but I do think there's enough in it that you could call it its own sort of sub-genre. So I want 2 questions for you to start off. A, what do you feel about the subgenre of movies, just generally, because we're going to talk about 6 specifically? And B, I mean, since we're here, what do you think about Little Green Men? Do you think aliens come to Earth and kidnap people? I mean, in recent months, we've had news on major station CNN where the government has admitted that they have a whole wing of the government that is studying, what are they calling them? Unidentified aerial phenomenon? AIPs or something like this? So it's not all just experiments up in the sky. There is stuff up there that they're trying to figure out what's that. But yeah, well, that's where I'm starting.
I'll start with the second question first.
Okay.
Sounds like a game show or something.
All right. For $500.
For $500. Oh, great. I hope I get the right answer here. I feel like there's a lot we don't know about the universe, and I do feel like it is very possible that we've had visitations from beings. I don't know where they're from or anything connected to that. Whether that leads us to believe that the 6 movies that we're reviewing have any kind of realism connected to them, especially one which is very much pushing the idea that it's based on a true story.
Right.
But I think it's possible. It's also possible that it's lights or some other phenomenon. But I do agree that it's been a long time coming that the U.S. government
Acknowledged it.
Yes, because it's not a surprise. I wish I could say maybe 20, 30 years ago I would have been surprised to hear that, but now I'm like, yeah. The
unidentified aerial phenomena to me is still quite a long ways from
little green men
coming down
yeah.
and experimenting.
And I guess I don't know if it's little green men or little gray men
right.
as presented in movies for generations, but I feel for me to dismiss it and say, oh no, it's impossible, as there's so many things we don't know about, and we keep uncovering more and more things that would be yeah. Probably when I was little, I was like, no, there's no aliens. It's they aren't real. Like, they're like monsters. But now I think it's possible. The other question, your first question, was about how I feel about this subgenre.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah,
it works for me. Sometimes we've talked about the areas of horror, and not all of these are necessarily horror that we're talking about in this episode, but sci-fi horror works for me where horror comedy, for example, doesn't work as well. This, in some situations, almost like the possession thing, and I know that doesn't work as much for you as it does for me, but this idea of you lose time and you're taken away, and your body has been invaded without your permission, like a demon possession type of a thing. That some of that stuff really freaks me out.
Yeah.
So there's a real spectrum of good, bad, and ugly in this genre, but on the whole, I like it.
Yeah. I wanted to draw that line in the introduction myself, that I will say clearly, I am not a believer in this sort of alien abduction type of things, but I don't need to believe in this stuff in order to get into the genre, because I totally dig this subgenre as well. It flicks a switch in me. I remember as a young kid, I was like grade 9 or 10, I read the first Whitley Strieber communion book. I didn't believe a word of it, but even at that age. But in the first couple of chapters, he talks about this paranoia that was overtaking him, where before he could go to bed every night, he'd have to search the house, like every cupboard, every closet. Like, he just didn't feel secure, no matter how much security stuff that he set up, no matter what. He was always paranoid and searching his own home. And that idea really, for some reason, put a hook in my brain. I just thought that was really interesting. But I've always thought that the specificity of everyone's account are all very human fears. They're all expressions of very human fears of losing one's identity, of being physically violated or raped, of they're all very human things. And the creatures they meet all have 2 eyes, 2 arms, 2 legs, all roughly the same size as us. It really sounds like someone trying to filter some trauma through an image that has been fed to them through pop culture, especially you and I, who grew up in the age of X-Files.
Yes.
This was a ubiquitous thing in pop culture and on television. So, no, I don't. I hate to just look at someone who is, believes that they've been terribly traumatized by an alien from outer space. And it's a different question, by the way, as do I think there's aliens? I actually 1000% believe that out there somewhere there are aliens. But I think that's a different conversation than, are they coming here and taking us?
Yeah.
Even just from the tech as we understand, our exploration of space is not us. We send our robots out into space and it's doing so. I would be more likely to believe that we would find something like that. Or about the operations that these aliens conduct. They're very brutal. They're old school Civil War battle operations. They don't have technology. Our technology on Earth has improved to the point where a lot of things that used to be operations are now injections, or that they used to open you wide up. They just put a little tiny little sliver in you. So it seems like the alien technology is almost behind ours in some of these stories.
It was ahead before, but now it's behind.
That's right.
Yeah. That's my take on, and many of the stories we're going to be talking about, is that idea of trauma. And in some cases, I think trauma, if it's not treated properly, could lead to potential psychosis.
Right.
And that may be what we're hearing from some folks, but this is very widespread. But also to be able to face your trauma, that's a very tough thing.
Of course.
A terrifying thing. So if you can say it was aliens, then you have some way of making that trauma make sense in your mind. Maybe not in the way that the world looks at things, but it's a way to be able to go on living your life. That I was a victim of an alien abduction as opposed to a victim of any number of other things. Yeah.
It makes the genre work on several levels. The paranoia, as I was talking about, being scared of your own home and being scared to go to bed. That's a bad place to be.
Yeah.
And lost time and everything like that. And it just works with the horror genre. Like, I find myself, as much as I don't believe it, I get creeped out by these movies quite easily. Half of these movies are claiming that they're based on true events, okay? I don't believe that, but I don't need to believe that to get into the movies. In fact, I think there might be a couple of cases where, because I'm so into this subject, that I'm maybe more forgiving than I should be of a couple of these, but we'll see. Is there anything else you wanted to say by way of introduction? I know it's a big subject.
It is. I enjoyed visiting these movies, and some of them are first-time watches. Some of them are first-time watches, and they shouldn't have been first-time watches.
Really? Okay.
But that gives kind of a fresh perspective, I guess, on this. I don't like all of these. And so I feel like even on my show recently, I've been negative, or maybe becoming a little bit harsher on things, or weighing it against kind of like what's the intention here. It'll be interesting to see where we are in agreement and where we disagree, because it seems like we always disagree on a couple of them.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to be the rank and review champion after the show, but it's...
I'm guessing... Again, who's to say? I'm guessing we're going to have the same top and bottom. I'm guessing. But
I would think so.
We'll see.
I would be surprised if... But yeah, it is interesting. And the thing that's interesting about, not to jump to the end, but the top of my list, I wish I was more excited about the top of my list.
Right. Okay.
Or at least one movie in the top of my list. But I'll just
To be
put it that way.
continued.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the list, here are the 6 alien abduction movies that we're going to talk about. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the director's cut from Mr. Steven Spielberg. Communion, the 80s Christopher Walken movie, which actually made it to my top 30 creepiest movies of the 80s, so that might tip my hand a little bit. Fire in the Sky. That came out just a few months before X-Files premiered on television, interestingly enough. Another purported to be based on true events, and a weirdly star-studded, in retrospect, movie. I like bumping into those. A embarrassingly low budget and kind of forgotten movie called Night Skies, which talks about the Phoenix Lights in Arizona, which to my mind is one of the most convincing UFO cases ever recorded. Over 5,000 witnesses over one evening. Like,
I don't know about the incident that we end up talking
no,
about.
I don't.
But,
not this.
But the actual and the references to the actual
lot of
event,
people saw some weird lights in the sky. Like, a lot of people saw some weird lights in the sky. This is Phoenix Lights. Then we have the Fourth Kind with Mila Jovovich, which is...
Jokovic, I think was...
Jokovic?
Yeah, she introduced herself. I finally, after all these years, I'm a fan of hers.
Yeah.
And I've been mispronouncing her name. There's one episode of my show where I think I used like 3 or 4 different pronunciations, and not one of them was right.
We'll just call her Mila.
Mila.
What was her name in the Fifth Element? I can't remember. And we'll finish it off with Dark Skies, which was from the Blumhouse horror wing thing, and it was a movie that came and went. And I thought maybe unnecessarily dismissed, but again, to be continued, we can have that conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Get on the heart of the 45th Street Conway. See what the hell they could be testing up there now.
This is the motion picture that astounded us, that challenged us, that dazzled us. The motion picture that reminded us we are not alone. This is the road that took us to the outer limits of a brilliant filmmaker's imagination. The road over 100 million people have taken and will want to take again. The road millions of others will take for the first time. But now the road will take us all even farther.
So, early stage Steven Spielberg is like sort of a conversation in of itself. But there's a run of films with one major blip. But like Duel, Jaws, Close Encounters, then there was that 1941 war movie, which was not good. It might be one of the worst things Steven Spielberg put his name to. But he made up for that with Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T., and The Color Purples. Like, he had just a ridiculous run of movies. And, I mean, I have obviously passionate feelings about Jaws. It's one of my favorite movies. It's one of the movies I've seen the most. And maybe controversially, I'm less hyped about E.T., but of this age of Spielberg, I think the most Spielberg movie he made is Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Like, this is so his wheelhouse. So, like, later in his career, he did a scary sci-fi movie, War of the Worlds, which was just so disappointing by contrast. Like, what I wanted that movie to be and what it was were two very separate things. But I've always had an affection for Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I say that it's not my favorite science fiction movie of all time. It's not like top tier, even Spielberg. But what he taps into here, better than in almost any of his other movies, is awe. This sort of awe and wonder and holy shit, we are witnessing something amazing. And he sustains that feeling very well through the entire runtime, even in the director's cut. And on top of that, I think, despite all the awe and all the aw shucks and all of the wonder, this is a closet horror movie.
Maybe not even a closet. Like, some scenes are, straight up horrific.
Yeah.
I kept thinking, though, if I was watching this in a movie theater, some of those might hit a little bit harder than watching it at home.
But even if you were to describe the story, right? There's a family guy, Roy Neary, played by Richard Dreyfuss, who, after encountering a spaceship doing his job out in the middle of nowhere, his life is completely changed. He's psychologically poisoned by it and driven to seek out this landing place, where he ends up being taken by these aliens from Earth, from his family, from everything, and we never see him again. That's a horror story, really, like, in a lot of ways. Maybe the aliens are friendly to him and he's, like, being taken to a place full of awe and mystery and wonder, and he's having a great time, but he's still not the person he was at the beginning of the movie. And he still abandons his family. And Spielberg himself has said if there was a thing he would change about this movie, it would be that. When he made it, he didn't have a family, so he just saw the opportunity to explore the universe was like a no-brainer. Now he's like, that guy turned his back on his family. Or the aliens did something to him that made him capable of turning his back on his family.
If it's a possession movie, then it's forgivable.
Right.
But if it's not, it's like this guy in a midlife crisis.
Yeah.
And he's got a busy household. And I think somehow, even though Spielberg wasn't a family man at the time, those are some of his best. He wrote it.
Yep.
He doesn't always write his movies. He wrote and directed. It's not like Paul Thomas Anderson, who writes and directs all of his stuff. Those are some of the best written scenes. The family stuff, that dynamic, felt very authentic up until a point. But if he just kind of, I haven't had anything exciting happen in my life and this is what I want to do, and he becomes obsessed with it, as he does, and he goes after it, then I could sort of see why Spielberg might have some regrets about that. Yeah. But it's the story he told, and it's the story of this guy. Now, if his regrets are about that, he saw himself as the Richard Dreyfuss character, and that
he's kind of ashamed of that.
That he's promoting that idea, but that's this character who made this choice. So I think maybe sometimes, I don't know how you feel about The Fabelmans. I'm a big fan of that movie. I feel like I've been defending that one for a few months because there seemed to be a bit of a backlash against it. That was the movie where I felt he kind of made himself the most vulnerable. He's always used alien abductions or different things to kind of as a mask from what his real life here. But I'm not sure. I could see how some things are about him, and because of The Fabelmans, I know a little bit more about his upbringing, where you could start to see some parallels. Why he would say at award shows, Close Encounters is in The Fabelmans, E.T. is in The Fabelmans, like all of these things. I got that a little bit more because it's been a few years since I watched this, and the first time I watched it, I've probably watched it only maybe 3 times. It's not like an annual thing that I watch this movie. I think I saw it when I was pretty young. I don't know why I have a memory like it was at a drive-in or something, but I don't know, whether that's a false memory or not. But I'm sure I saw it when I was single-digit age category, because I know I was a huge fan of E.T. I haven't watched E.T. for a long time. I'm curious how I react to it now, if it's as big in my mind and in my nostalgia as it is
in reality.
In reality, but and then I bought the disc years ago, and then I watched it then, and then all these years have passed. So I know a lot more about Spielberg than I did when I first saw this, and I was a little bit more like curious because I know Richard Dreyfuss was a little bit of his muse for a few years, for a couple films there, and I think I just watched, I thought, Spielberg handles alien movies really well, unlike some other filmmakers. This time watching it, I don't know why it didn't work as well. Don't send hate mail to me. I think it might have been, the day of, I keep believing in this, the time of day or the day I watch it and whatever's going on. But I found myself writing a lot more negative things than I expected. I thought it would be just a love fest. Well, I can put the phone down. I don't have to type as many notes for this one.
Let's just take the ride.
But when you think about it, I think this is a director's film, not a writer's film. Because if you describe, and you did a good job of describing the plot very concisely, because that's all there really is to it.
Yeah.
He encounters the alien, becomes obsessed, leaves his family, tracks it down, and then has this opportunity. And then we have the subplot with Melinda Dillon
and her missing child.
Which actually, this time around, I found that way more interesting than
that's the horror
else.
Aspect.
That's where the horror, the abduction scene. I would challenge any other abduction scene in any film up against that one. Well, why, though, it turned into the sentimental Spielberg thing in the climax, it got completely flipped around, and that's where it doesn't become a horror movie anymore. But
it's interesting because most of our conversation's been pretty, not academic, but fanboyish over Spielberg,
yes,
but less about the film. And I think both the strength and weakness of the film for me is that it's about moments instead of the whole piece.
Yeah, I guess so.
The sequence where Richard Dreyfuss encounters the spaceship and his car gets lifted and it gets flipped and all
that's a great scene.
Amazingly well done.
Great
the
scene.
The scene where the little boy sees the light outside the window and walks towards it and opens the door is an amazing sequence.
Yeah.
Like the sequence where the scientists are trying to communicate using music to the spaceships is by itself an amazing scene. Where they find the ship in the middle of the desert. All of these scenes by themselves could almost be the subject of their own movie. They're great. But the through line, I think, is kind of, in the end, unsatisfying because maybe we don't want Richard Dreyfuss to go away, or we don't see, I guess, especially when I saw it as a kid, that being the end point. We wanted him to be vindicated, wanted people to know that he wasn't crazy, because that's a theme of all these movies, gaslighting, almost like I would have a really hard time believing if you, my very good friend, told me that you were abducted by aliens. I wouldn't laugh at you, I wouldn't make fun of you, but I would have a real hard time. Same thing if you told me you saw an angel, or if you
Yeah.
I would have to wrestle with it somewhat, right? Like it's very real in that. So for me, the satisfying conclusion was, it's proof he wasn't crazy. That would have been enough of a win, and he could have hugged his kids and everybody. Oh, it's true. He's not mad. Like that would have been enough.
How would you have felt though if I had gone out right now into your street, gathered up all the garbage in the neighborhood, started stealing stuff off from gardens, and constructed this mountain right here in this room?
And that's where I talk about the transformation of that character, because
Yeah.
that is not realistic or logical or
That's
like,
the weakest part of the movie.
yeah.
And I don't think I noted it the previous times I watched it.
But those isolated moments I'm talking about it for me are so good that
Yes.
it more than makes
They
up
usurp
for it.
everything.
I absolutely do
Yeah.
believe that. And I don't think it's a bad movie at all. Like, it doesn't sink the ship in any way. But that is something. And as a result, the B story about this little kid and his mother is way more compelling to me after a point.
Yeah.
Because I don't understand why Dreyfuss is making these choices other than he's been driven mad. Melinda Dillon losing her mind and desperate to find her child.
That makes
That
sense.
is absolutely believable and credible. And in the documentary, Steven Spielberg talks about this, and it's a thing that I've actually criticized in his movies before, but at least now more understand what he's going for. His belief is, quote, kids trust the light. Adults are terrified, right? What the fuck
Yeah.
is going on? But kid's only been around for a few years. He doesn't know what's good and what's normal and what makes sense or what doesn't.
Yeah.
So when I used to rage against Elliot walking towards the mysterious light and smoke in the backyard,
Yeah.
finding E.T., like as a kid, I didn't find that credible. And same thing with this little boy walking towards the alien light in his backyard. But I really felt like Spielberg has sold me on this idea that
Yeah.
like kids trust the light to
true.
their great danger possibly, but kids trust the light. And yeah, that is the kind of stuff that I locked into. I love Bob Balaban. I thought it was interesting
Good
to
role
see
for him.
Francois Truffaut
Yeah.
acting.
Yes.
It's a strange decision, and Spielberg has cast actors in his movies before, as we were talking about David Lynch, because we always got to plug David Lynch.
Spoilers for
Was that a spoiler? I'm sorry.
well, I think that's a big surprise in one of his
David
recent films, but
Yeah.
you know,
To begin
we aren't saying which one, but yeah, I think the direction is the star. Melinda Dillon is kind of a MVP of the actors, I think.
Sure.
You know, and Richard Dreyfuss, I think, got a lot of the attention because he was the biggest movie star in this.
And
But
is good.
He's good. There's some points where I might argue that it goes a bit over the top, but I also know that there was not Spielberg consuming himself, but there was a lot of cocaine on that set.
Oh, really?
There was, and with the producers, the Phillips,
Right.
who produced Taxi Driver the year before, their marriage broke up sometime around the end of this production, and I think Julia Phillips, I think is her name, or no, maybe not Julie. Anyway, she and Dreyfuss were doing a lot of coke during this shoot, so that
He's got
maybe
a lot
comes
of
across
energy.
to the energy, but he's always been kind of a big energy type of an actor. I think he feels better in roles where he can be bigger, as opposed to a more nuanced performance from Melinda Dillon. But the other thing I really need to congratulate Spielberg. Not that he needs my congratulations, by the way.
He's gonna go
He's
places.
gonna be all right, I think. You know.
He's gonna go
But
places.
his direction of the kids,
Yeah,
and
as
in
usual.
particular that little boy, it felt like a little boy. It didn't feel scripted. This is exactly how this little kid would, doesn't really know how to speak that much, and wanders out and is so happy, and then at the end, I didn't see any of the cutesy child acting that I sometimes see in films.
Yeah.
So I thought that, and the cinematography is outstanding. And I also John Williams score.
Oh, yeah.
Where would this movie be without John Williams music?
And where would Spielberg be, honestly? Like, I mean, not that the movies aren't great, but he really, it's not just a side dish. It's like a real extra coat of paint over everything that brings it up another notch. Like, yeah, definitely I'm glad you shouted that out. Since we did watch the director's cut, Spielberg said when it was originally released, he didn't feel like it was quite finished. And he was allowed to do a director's cut on the condition that he showed more of the inside of the spaceship. And the great debate of people between, the 3 different versions of the film is, should we go inside the spaceship? Is that showing us too much? I mean, we saw the little alien greys either case. Like, we did actually get to see some aliens. So,
Did you notice the baby ones look like E.T.?
Well,
maybe it's just for a shot, and maybe it was my imagination.
E.T. wasn't around yet, so...
But I think this might have been a lead-in to... There's a lot of lead-ins to Indiana Jones.
Right.
Like, it's in Raiders of the Lost Ark and what he does with the mountaintop and the lights and the, and even the opening felt similar. But, yeah, I thought I saw something, which I don't know if it was after the fact, digitally altered or what. We're just...
A little E.T.
Yeah. If he's trying to...
I must have... Well, I wasn't looking for it. And again, when next time I watch the movie, I'm going to be looking to see if Dreyfuss is coked out. But my question is, like, Spielberg says what happens on the ship, whatever's on the ship, and wherever that ship goes, that is simply the providence of the audience. And he didn't want to go inside the ship. That was like a thing. So that's why there's 3 cuts. There's like the theatrical cut, there's a director's cut, and then there's the special edition. Where do you land on that? Do you think...
I haven't watched the special edition, so I can't talk about that one. I don't really want to go in the ship.
Yeah. I don't think that's what the movie's about.
No, it isn't.
And once the longer you take with that extended ending, like there's some cool visuals and stuff like that, but it's all extended resolution. I mean, I think I side with Spielberg that we don't need to go on board. I think we saw enough. We might even have saw more than we should. Some of those aliens look a little bit goofy to me, but
like E.T.
Yeah, or they look like kids in costumes.
Well, there's the one that's kind of like the thin
with the long arms.
Yeah,
and is decidedly
the
not human, and they probably consciously made that choice to make a very not human-looking aliens. But a lot of them looked.
But the little baby alien things,
they look like us. I do like this movie a lot. I feel like we've been focusing a lot on the negatives. I think
it's because we admire it. I think, and we know what it could be. I mean,
if you haven't seen it, like it really holds your attention. It's 2 hours and it flies right by. And even if you agree with us about the weaknesses of some of the characters or like how things play out, you are not wasting your time.
It's more than 2 hours. I think 2 hours, and 15 minutes or something like that. It's. But
it's a worthy sci-fi entry. It is.
It is
absolutely.
And this is where the sci-fi. This is the foreshadowing of the 80s, and Star Wars came out the same year. I mean, that really changed.
Yeah.
Where Hollywood would go for a while.
Yeah. And it's not Star Wars, right? It's not fantasy in space.
No, it is
science fiction.
No, and it's kind of a nice to have those both in the same year. That it's a completely different type of film.
Yeah. So thumbs up.
Yeah. Yes.
Is that good?
It wasn't a dream.
There's a group that meets.
Group?
People who've seen the same sort of things you have.
Which group of aliens abducted you?
Bob, we are not victims. We are participants.
I don't recall them being human.
I got to go, my baby screaming!
You people, you sit there, you're in for one big surprise.
So, Whitley Strieber is a fairly prolific writer of fiction, which makes me greatly skeptical of his whole Communion franchise. I think there's 5 books in the series. I could be wrong. I have not read all of them. I am not going to read all of them. It's interesting, though, because, like, anybody selling this sort of kind of... snake oil is a little bit unkind, but, like, here you're presenting it as if it's true. And he's constantly like, we're right around the corner. Any day now, we're going to see the truth and the alien agenda will be exposed. He's been saying that since 1987. Any day now. It's the same principle that Alex Jones, I think, runs on. Like, you know, like, just keep them watching today. They just got to get them through today.
Fox Mulder, too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Any second, we're going to hit the alien conspiracy is going to become obvious. So, I can't approach this movie taking it seriously. And even a little bit. But it's got two things working for it that is going to make me like it more than it deserves. The first thing is I saw it as a child.
Oh, yeah.
And I found it terrifying. Like, it profoundly disturbed me the first time I saw it. I didn't know who Whitley Strieber was. I didn't know anything about it. But it was like, it was an alien movie. And sometimes when a movie gets into your psyche at a young age and makes an impression, it's hard to let go of it. Like, it just is. And the second thing is Christopher Walken. I love me some Christopher Walken. I've always loved me some
too.
Christopher Walken. Even at his weirdest and Walkenest, I just, like, I love me Christopher Walken. Those two things get me through the movie. Because I will confess, watching Communion today, it is dying of 80s. Like, you can tell it was made in the heart of the 80s because it just reeks out of every single fiber of the movie's being. And a lot of the times I can look past that and it doesn't really bother me, but for some reason it's really obtrusive. Somewhere between the Eric Clapton guitar riffs,
which I liked,
and the big 80s hair, it's just they used it so much. The repetitive nature of it. The smoke-filled rooms, the big 80s hair, like, there's something absurd about the presentation a lot of the time. And I'm not going to make excuses for that or apologize for that. I don't like him being hard on child actors, but I don't think the little kid in this
he's
movie
terrible.
is
I'm
good
sorry.
at all. Like, I believe the parents. I'm not a fan of Lindsay Krause, but I actually thought she did some pretty decent naturalistic acting in this movie.
She was more animated than some of her work.
Yeah, a lot of times I think she's like a robot. Like, someone needs to... She should be saying, oil can! Oil can! But, and Frances Steenhagen, of course, Hagen shows up, and I'm a big fan of her. And she's really good at selling credibility and incredible plots. We talked about that exact thing when we reviewed the De Palma movie.
Raising Cain.
What I recommend the movie for are the abduction sequences, are the nightmare sequences. The stuff in between, I will confess, is hard to take. But the first couple times, the first couple nights at the cabin where they're having the issues with the electronic lights outside, and the first time he sees that half alien face peeking from the behind the door frame, has never not been frightening to me. And I am, again, sort of sympathetic to... There's a sequence in the middle of the movie where Whitley and his wife go to an encounter group of all of these people who are telling their encounter stories, and Steenhagen is running the group. And hearing their stories, they're sympathetic because they have similar stories that are crazy. But hearing those stories sends them fleeing from the room. Even though they know in their minds it's true, they have a hard time hearing other people talking about it. And... It's interesting to say honesty in a movie that's pure fiction, but I thought that was a fairly, quote, honest reaction. The movie doesn't offer any answers. It's basically an advertisement for Whitley Strieber's book. He wrote the screenplay. It's completely biased to his perspective. But do I think that aliens came down to, like, New York, New York State, and had continually been fucking with him and his family for the past 40 years? No, I don't. And I don't think this movie makes a good case. But Christopher Walken is awesome, and I still find some of those abduction sequences quite frightening. Am I crazy?
I don't think you're a crazy person.
Okay.
That doesn't mean I like this movie.
Right.
Here's the thing. It was built up. This was a first time viewing. This is one of the ones I said I should have
scene when you were
before,
in the 80s. Yeah.
and I remember it would play at midnight
Right.
on CTV, but I would fall asleep before it barely got going. And I feel like, if I had watched it in that single age, then this would be like legendary for me, right? But watching it at, 43 years old, I wasn't sure what was going on, and not in a good way. Like, I almost feel like they were given free rein to improvise a lot of scenes, and some scenes between Lindsay Krause and Christopher Walken felt like I was watching acting class exercises.
Right.
Like they were workshopping scenes. Their fights as a couple just didn't make sense. It felt like they were trying to build up to the energy of having the actual fight.
Right.
But it didn't work. And, I like Christopher Walken too. But at this point, I have no idea what he's doing. I really, and I will get behind some random Christopher Walken performances, but I have no idea what it felt like he was riffing almost. He doesn't seem to be talking to anybody. He's talking, like he has a scene with his son, and you're right. I once upon a time I had Tim Hildebrand on my show, and I had made a similar comment to the one you make, that you can't be too hard on child actors. He said, why not? They're getting paid just like the adult actors are to deliver, so why do we have to be kinder to them?
Because they're kids.
Because they're kids, and they don't have the life experience that the adult actors do.
The Razzies nominated that little girl.
That was horrible.
That was fucking awful.
And I'm glad that they backed away and that they're changing their policy. Like, I don't know what they were thinking in that sense.
Yeah.
And I don't think these children should be nominated for Razzies, but
we can acknowledge a strong performance or a weak performance.
Yeah, and I just talked about a really good young child, younger than this child performance.
Yeah.
I do think it's up to the director to garner that performance. Now, film schedules and the timing and everything, sometimes that's not as possible. You can't be spending the entire day getting to that place. But the kid isn't great, but he kind of needed help from Walken. And it feels like Walken's in a vacuum acting. This was something I got criticized for in university, acting in a vacuum.
Right.
That is doing something, and it doesn't matter if anybody else is in the room. And I don't know if this is I know this is about the writer of the book, and Walken's playing him, and I don't know if this is what this guy's like or not, or if Walken was just told by the director, Philippe Mora, to just do whatever he wants, and that's what he was doing. So it's weird for me to be critical of a Christopher Walken performance. He has the moments, the beats where he looks like kind of affected and creepy, and that works, and it works well in the abduction scenes, which I agree are the best, or the visitation scenes, which are the best part of the film. But I'm not.
I love.
Do you like the scenes in the whatever it looks like a store, a warehouse or something, but it's supposed to be the ship, or
at the end with the top hats?
And he's acting with himself, and I think his wife is his assistant, and I don't. But
it gets absurd. I mean,
yeah.
But again, it's all his weird.
I haven't read the book, so I don't know. Is it like that in the book?
Well, he's trying. It's sort of like trying to remember a dream in the book. So, pieces of it seem to have logical narrative, and then all of a sudden, I'm somewhere else, and it's different. And I think the problem is, as much as I do love Christopher Walken, and he does make me smile and even laugh, whether or not he should in this movie, is that what we really needed is an everyman, and Christopher Walken is just not an everyman. I love the dude, don't get me wrong, but he brings that Christopher Walken energy, and he's different. He's already. It's sort of like people complain about Jack Nicholson in The Shining. In that movie, he seems like crazy Jack Nicholson from frame one. So it seems like he has less of a journey to go on.
Yes.
Certainly less of a journey that he was given in the novel. And I think that maybe less eccentric performance would have been helpful to the movie. I think that Philip Morrow's thought was, if we can get Christopher Walken,
we'll just let him do what he wants.
We'll get Christopher Walken, and who's going to tell Christopher Walken how to do his thing, right? Like, it was
Michael
also,
Cimino, maybe, who made,
It was also in an independent production. This was made outside the Hollywood system. I think Whitley Strieber wrote the script. He adapted his own book, but he was particular about it. So I don't know how he came upon Philip Morrow, but they got Christopher Walken interested, and then he was doing a play with Lindsay Krause, and then it was about people who knew people. That's probably why they got the very subpar child actor that they did. But I understand making that mistake, but I do think it might have been a mistake, because it would be more terrifying, and I think we would. We wouldn't be shaken out of it by the eccentricity. We would just be more scared for him. But then we have the trade-off, like when he has the face-to-face with the aliens. Maybe the set isn't particularly convincing. It's a low-budget movie. But when Christopher Walken is having a conversation with another Christopher Walken, which is an alien in disguise, and it's like, that's not what you look like. You're not going to show me what you look like. You're smart. And no other actor would deliver that line that way. And I don't know, for me, it was kind of interesting. Strieber himself, in the series of books, has gone to the point where now he's not even sure that they're aliens. Now that science has confirmed that other dimensions can exist, perhaps these are interdimensional. So he's constantly moving the line.
Yeah, I guess so.
But I go back to my initial experience of the movie, which is maybe not the fairest way to rate it, but I cannot undo the psychological damage that this movie did to me when I was 8.
I mean, in fairness, there's a movie we're going to be talking about later, which I'm going to be probably doing the same thing, where this viewing wasn't as effective as my first viewing.
Right.
So that's fair enough, but yeah, that scene felt like it was like a bad scene in a Stephen King adaptation.
Right.
Something that, and from one of the TV adaptations, which I know we've talked about before. Or I can't even say it's Lynchian, because it would be handled a lot, or it'd be more interesting if it was Lynchian, even if we didn't have a clue what was going on.
It would be more abstract, but it would be more hypnotizing.
I mean, I'm happy seeing Christopher Walken with a pencil-thin mustache talking about random stuff, but
what a weird choice.
Yes. I don't know. I really wish I liked this movie more than I did, and I think it was the anticipation. Oh, this is a capital H horror movie I'm about to see, and it was not. And it was
There's also a scene set at Halloween where Christopher Walken just loses his mind. I just put myself in the position of that little kid.
He attacks a kid.
This kid's in a Halloween costume, and it triggers the memory of the aliens, and he unleashes on this little kid. And I mean, I don't know if it's an appropriate acting choice, but I wouldn't take it out of the movie.
Well, and
you might enjoy it for the wrong reasons, is I guess what they're saying, but I think it's enough of a curio that I can still recommend it. Like, it's a hard sit at times. There is some bad 80s-ness, and like I say, I have never been a Lindsay Krause fan, and I think she actually does kind of okay by Lindsay Krause standards.
Yeah, it's a better than average Lindsay Krause performance, which isn't really saying much, I guess, unfortunately. I'm allowed to be harder on her, I guess. But oh man, I would say people should watch it and judge for themselves. Okay. But my thumb's down, sadly. Yeah. And this is the one where I thought we're not going to go 6 for 6.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's got some sentimental attachment, and that does go a long way for me. Yeah. I'm not going to lie. Good enough?
Yep.
How does it think? What makes it move? Why does it breathe? Questions anyone would ask about a man if they'd never seen one before. So for 5 days, a man was borrowed. The story that traveled Travis Walton and 5 other witnesses told was so unbelievable, so unimaginable, that it has become the most famous case of UFO abduction ever reported.
So Fire in the Sky is purported to be based on the true events of a bunch of log workers, and it's supposedly based on a true story, small town, and it's interesting in this specific case. There's a lot of circumstantial and physical evidence to go with the story, and the fact that this group of guys were under serious investigation for murder before this guy showed up 5 days later. That much of the movie is at least true. A lot of the specifics are not true. Like, they did take a lot of liberties with it. And apparently the dude's story, once he gets on the ship, it gets so unbelievable that they didn't even try to adapt it. Like, in his story, he actually takes controls of the vehicle and flies it for a while. Like, it hurts the credibility of the movie. And I think that the focus of the director and the writer was, whether or not they believed it, they're going to present it as honestly as they can. They're going to present... We have the skeptical character that James Garner plays, which I think is a very believable anchor, which sometimes these movies need. And we have the point of view of all the different characters. And it's interesting, because I always remember thinking of D.B. Sweeney as the star of the movie, but it's interesting how much of the movie he's not present for.
Yes.
But the last 20 minutes of the movie is purporting to be his experience, and it is famously one of the most terrifying sequences in sci-fi horror, and it remains so today. I don't think many people will argue that. The debate is the first 2/3 of the movie. I find it really interesting because it's a straight-faced look at how the community would react, I assume. And I find it mostly credible. And I did like that the skeptical position was taken seriously and not necessarily fully vilified. There was a reason to suspect these guys, and even more in real life, as they would sometimes, after they did their job, hang out and do beer with drops of acid in it in the middle of the forest. So yeah, you might see all sorts of crazy shit, that being the case, right? And there was some tension within the group. There was reason to think that something might have gone so I appreciated it. I understand somebody coming in wanting to see aliens, getting impatient with the movie, but I promise you...
when you get there...
the movie is going to deliver. And in the meantime, can we talk about Robert Patrick in this movie? Because he is fucking awesome in
They
this
finally...
movie.
I mean, why no other filmmaker has chosen to use Robert Patrick fully? This is I might argue this is the best he's ever been. Most famously, Terminator 2.
He's famous for that, yeah.
But that's not a three-dimensional role. I mean, he is very good in the movie. There's a couple things where I think the writing of the screenplay fails him a bit, but he does his best. Yeah.
And like the whole cast we were talking about at the introduction, we have Henry Thomas, speaking of E.T. Craig Schaefer, we talked about him in Nightbreed, playing his more typical asshole role. This is the role that he usually gets cast in, and this is the role that he's comfortable in. Yeah. I believe Craig Schaefer as an asshole.
But I think it's more than that.
Motivated.
I mean,
it's motivated. Like, he has a reason. He's got a rough background.
And I think he has a couple other notes which aren't just one thing. To me, one of the sad things is he kind of disappears from the third act of the film. But
it feels more real because people will run away from situations.
He wasn't buddies with these guys, so why would he be hanging around for the next part?
They work really hard at making the movie credible, and I think that actually makes the terror so much more terrifying at the end. I think that it's a pretty brave and smart choice that they did that. And the movie didn't make a ton of money, but it has a cult following, and people seek out copies of it to this day. I paid almost $30 for my DVD copy of Fire in the Sky because it's out of print.
I have a digital copy. I think I forget if it's Shout Factory or Scream Factory is going to be if they haven't already released it in the next. I
That's
don't think it was
usually what
I think-
happens when I
yeah.
overpay for one.
Yeah, of course. Yes, I've had that same experience too. So.
And who was I also wanted to mention Peter Berg, right?
Yeah.
'Cause
Very different role for him compared to what he
more of a
does.
meek thing, yeah.
Yeah.
And he would very shortly after this movie switch the trajectory of his career, and now he mainly works behind the camera and making movies like Hancock or whatever. But it's kind of an interesting, weirdly star-studded cast. And again, like I said, my memory of the movie is that it's starring D.B. Sweeney, but since he's the guy who's missing for 5 days, he's missing for the bulk. We get a chunk at the beginning and then like a large chunk of the movie without him. I do think he's good in the movie when we get him back.
Yes.
And that definitely brings the narrative stakes up a next level, because now the discussion is why did these guys kill him to what the hell did happen to him?
Yes.
He shows up stark naked at a gas station
in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. So I think that a lot of things that people call weaknesses of the film, like it's got a slow first half and that they spend too much time getting to the spaceships, I would disagree. I would say that those are actually in turn strengths. Yeah. I would just say no that you're getting into it. I would sometimes I say you shouldn't know anything about a movie before going into it. I'll say know that you're going to watch a really scary alien movie, but that it's top heavy. Like it's the last third where you're going to get the scares, but you're going to get a lot of interesting setup. And my opinion of the movie has only improved. Because I was in high school when I first watched the movie, and I was a little bit impatient with it when I first saw it. But every year that goes by, I don't know that it's been beat as far as, this type of movie where I can take it, quote, seriously. So I think it's immensely successful. Yeah. But that's just my opinion.
The one thing I'll start off with before I get into it, when we're criticizing Walken in the previous film, because he's not an everyman, D.B. Sweeney is an everyman.
Yes, he is.
And that's the type of actor that they needed in Communion. Yes.
It helps a lot. Yeah.
And I think it may be D.B. Sweeney's best performance. I mean, he had a very brief
run there.
The Cutting Edge, the figure skating movie, and this. And
I'm aware of the Cutting Edge.
Yes, I know you are. Yes. We speak the same language, you and I. I feel like if I had any guts, that I would be choosing this as the number one movie on my rank. If I had any guts, I you know why I'm hesitating a bit,
right.
But because of the six, the one that this time around I had the best time with was Fire in the Sky.
Right.
I have, as I do with all of these, I have some positive notes, I have some negative notes. I've heard this before, and I kind of agree that the second act is the weakest part of the film. I like the first act. Like, the first scene felt so dramatic. It's like, oh, whoa, what's going on here? But then I kind of settled into it once they get into the bar and all this stuff has happened, and we hear the story that they have agreed to tell, and James Garner. That could be just a throwaway type of role. James Garner elevates that. That's another instance where a two-dimensional character becomes a lot more interesting and a lot more important.
He doesn't believe their story for a minute, and you know what? He shouldn't.
No.
He shouldn't.
No, it doesn't make sense. Some of the small town stuff, I think some of it would be true. Yeah. That this kind of positive leader in the town, Robert Patrick, suddenly. Well, everybody believes that he's a murderer, and then everybody's terrible to him. I can get behind that. What I can't get behind is, first of all, I don't know what purpose they thought in having this town hall meeting to discuss the investigation. And it's a setup for a rather ridiculous monologue, which doesn't say much. It just leads them to the conclusion that they're going to do the lie detector tests. But that Robert Patrick doing his best to deliver on what I thought was a badly written monologue.
Yeah.
But those are the negatives. Once we get into he's alive and trying to figure out where he is and that whole journey, that's fantastic stuff. And when, I love the editing when he's being taken off to the hospital and he's having flashes of the ship.
Yeah.
I am not quite sure why, when they discover him naked in the gas station, their first call was the UFO people.
That's a strange
I don't think that happened. I think you're calling the ambulance right away.
And also, once he's found, the people who have been called in to do this investigation have no reason to stay around, and they just do.
Yes. Yeah.
These are things I have no...
Yeah, it doesn't... Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. But, yeah, the highlight of this film, and the reason it maybe should be number one on my list, is on the ship. Because, and there's another movie that does this, and I think fairly well, but not as well as this. That is one of the scariest, best sequences I've ever seen on an alien ship. And this is one where going into the ship was absolutely necessary for this movie.
Yeah.
Versus the restraint of Spielberg not going into the ship in Close Encounters, because they're about different.
And we spend an
topics.
hour and 20 minutes leading up to this point. Like,
Yes.
we earn it.
Yes. and it does not disappoint.
No.
It does not disappoint.
And they don't lurk in the shadows anymore. We get a look at a bunch of different aliens, and they're all quite frightening. And the experience is uncomfortable to watch. It feels like a rape scene almost, because that's how people describe it, right? So
the gore and
how long
ooze
it goes on, it just keeps going on and on. It's like you spend the whole movie wanting this scene, but once the scene gets here, you want the scene to stop.
Yeah. And I'm sure he wanted out of there too.
Right.
But yeah, I had heard that the guy who wrote the book or that had this experience, I don't know if he was that happy with the movie.
Right.
But I don't know what exactly happened. Now, this is one where I'm having trouble, and, you know, maybe a bad acid trip, and that's why he disappeared for 4 days.
Off into the woods.
And has no memory of what went on, and
that's a very credible
I think
explanation.
that's because in each movie I was trying to figure out, okay, what is the down to earth possibility that happened here, and I had theories for all of them. I was.
Whether he wandered off during an acid trip or he was stolen by the alien, I think the thing that I latched onto with the Robert Patrick character, Mike,
Yeah.
is when he sees his buddy, as he describes it, trapped in this beam of light. By the way, D.B. Sweeney is doing everything wrong. Everyone tells him to stop. Everyone says, don't do it.
Yeah.
And he wanders
It's his own
out
fault.
to them. Like, he puts himself in this
Yeah.
position. But Mike cannot forgive himself for driving away.
Yeah.
Like, and I understand that. Like, I totally get it.
Yeah, you left your
was
friend there.
Absolutely terrifying. And he was doing everything wrong. And then all of a sudden he was being lifted up in the sky. And he had to remove himself from the situation, so he hit the gas. And he just can't forgive himself for it. And I think that's such a strong character beat. And I think that feeds into a lot of the... He feels he kind of deserves the shit that he's getting on some level. He's not lying to these people about what happened, but he did abandon his friend.
He did. And, I mean, I don't want to spoil it, because I don't think a lot of people have seen this movie. It's been kind of a bit of a forgotten early 90s, and I have a soft spot for those.
Well, it should be rediscovered. Cause
It really should. But that last scene is terrific.
Yeah.
It's a trip. Scene, when you just pare
reconcile-
it down to those guys at the end, what a beautiful way to end the film.
They've both been changed, but they're both still friends, and they forgive each other if that was required.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that if D.B. Sweeney put the pieces together, he would not have any resentment. Like, obviously what happened to him was terrible, but you have to understand that that would have been an absolutely terrifying experience for everybody involved.
But it's interesting to see what happens, that, you know, he gains his family.
Yeah.
And Robert Patrick loses his.
Yeah.
You know, there's something tragic about it. And, yeah, Robert Patrick is really good. I mean,
I think
he anchors the film.
Performance of the movie. Totally.
Yeah.
And
but,
that was the thing that
and
surprised
everybody's good, though. I can't... Was there... Maybe some of the town folks were a little bit...
Oh, like, they had good character, absolutely. You know Noble Willingham, the sheriff?
Oh, yeah.
You see him in all sorts
of
movies.
He's a character
like that
guy.
Yeah. No, I think that it was actually Robert Patrick that was the thing that shone the brightest for me this viewing. Because it had been a while since I'd seen it too, and like again, I went in thinking like the D.B. Sweeney movie, but no, this is a Robert Patrick movie, and man, he did a great villain role in the Copland movie, and like you get to see him every now and then really shine out, but I don't think he ever got his fair shake.
No.
As much as he got a career out of Terminator 2, he kind of got sort of slotted into like villain roles in The Faculty or whatever, and there he's made a good living, but I wonder if he was an unsung powerhouse that didn't get his due.
I think there's a lot of the actors that we know from film and television that are considered one thing.
Yeah.
That could do a lot more, and sometimes you hear about they do theater.
Right. Or
maybe it's not Broadway, but it's in their hometown or something where they get to play the characters that they can't get in TV shows and film. But I'm glad that this performance exists to let people know that he's a lot more than a Terminator or a...
Well, I think, he was part of X-Files too. I just remembered that as I was thinking it.
Yeah,
so
and they gave him more to do in that.
Yeah.
It still kind of felt like they were waiting for David Duchovny to figure out his stuff to come back to the show. Like, he always felt... Maybe it's unfair to say that.
X-Files, Terminator in this, if he wanted to make his living in the convention circuit, he probably could now. Yeah. So, I don't think we need to be worried for Robert Patrick. But
no, he's fine.
I've always liked him, but I just somehow missed this one. Like, even seeing this movie several times, I've missed how good he was. So.
And you mentioned, too, Copland and Faculty are...
Yeah.
Terrific performances, but still
that
villain as opposed to the everyman guy that we're cheering for and we're watching is like, no, he's not a murderer. Like, come on, town, why are you?
This story costs him as much as it does D.B. Sweeney.
Yeah, arguably more.
Yeah, good enough.
Good enough.
They're there again.
What are you all looking at?
Goddamn radio.
Come on, it's not like we're having a close encounter or something. Matt!
Hey, you guys okay?
Matt! Joe's hurt! Get in here!
Pull it out. He needs to get into a hospital. I'm going to get help. There's something ahead.
Is someone out there?
Matt! Where the hell are you? Matt!
Was that a gunshot?
Get inside! Philippe, now! Everyone, stay away from the windows! There's something out there. I'm begging you to believe me.
It's Matt! He's outside!
No!
Stop, Matt! Molly! What just happened?
I wish I knew.
Alright, we're going to talk about this film called Night Skies, which I'm sure of this list of movies is probably the one the least amount of people have any awareness of. Because I believe it was a direct-to-video release and came and went, made no ripples. And maybe that's deserved. This is a micro-budget movie, and that becomes painfully obvious, painfully early in the movie. But it's really going for it in a way that I do cheer for it. Like, I have made a movie.
Yes.
I know how hard it is to do it, so I get the corners that are being cut, and although I see them, like, anything shot outside of the motorhome that we're in this movie was shot in a completely different time and place than anything that was shot inside the motorhome, and that is painfully obvious when you see it in the movie. Like, the illusion isn't there. When they're looking out the windows at the lights in the sky, it's a really embarrassingly bad green screen effect. Like, the edges of their bodies look like crimped in. It looks like a worse effect than you saw in, like, some of the early effects from, like, the 70s, 60s, 70s, where it was like a really awe-inspiring effect, but super obvious. But it's weird to have super obvious green screen in 2007. Like, and so there's a lot to climb over in the movie, but because I've been in the position to try to make a movie for no money, I find myself cheering for this movie. Some of the exposition, as handled by the screenplay, is terrible. Like, terrible, wince-inducing dialogue. This is who I am. Everybody here would already know that, but I'm going to say it out loud.
Yeah.
I say all of this, but I'm going to throw a but on it. If you can, get past that. And it's going to be a hurdle. Some of the acting is better than others. The main character is intensely unlikable, or at least the main character as we're introduced.
Shockingly, like, yeah.
And, like, there's a lot working against the movie. And yet, I think it does have moments where all of a sudden it just clicks in and starts working for a few minutes. I'm like, yeah, you guys, you're doing it. We're there. This is working. This is working. And then, oh no, now we dropped the ball again. Oh, but you picked it up again. I do think that, generally speaking, the deeper into the movie we get, the better things are going for this movie. But I can't think of a person that I would recommend watching Night Skies to without blushing pretty hard. I'm cheering for the movie. I like that they treat it seriously and with gravitas. It's not one of these cheap movies where they're like, look at how cheap this is, look at how silly we're being. Like, they're taking it 1,000% seriously. And that's, I think, the way to go. Don't be trauma about it, or like just be winking at the camera, or just give up before you start. Yeah. Make the best movie that you can with the tools at your disposal. So, though I may give it a shrugging, barely there thumbs up because I liked what they were going for and I'm just sympathetic to the cause, I have a real hard time endorsing it that enthusiastically. Because it is, at the end of the day, kind of amateur. But when it works, it works. And there's enough times it works that, like, I'm, at the risk of sounding condescending, I'm proud of everybody involved. You know, like, I'm so cheering for this scrappy little silly movie. And I would love to see what they would do with a bigger budget and a more confident cast. So, a swing and a miss, but it's an affectionate thumbs down. Is that, I guess?
So, is your thumb up or it is
right,
down?
It's right on the side.
You said it was kind of up. Okay.
Like, for me, I give it enough of a thumbs up, but it's not enough of a thumbs up that I can think of anyone that I would say, you should watch Night Skies, you'll really like it. Like, I feel like it's my personal life experience, my love for this genre, and the fact that I've made a movie in and about this budget range, that I cheer for it.
Well, I'll tell you, you can recommend it to.
You?
Jason Dubray.
Nice.
Because this one snuck up on me and was... it's solid thumbs up, actually. To the point where I've struggled where to put it in the ranking. Because it seemed like it'd be the obvious bottom of the list. In the first section...
From a production standpoint, I would say that it is.
Well, yes. I mean, but that's not...
That doesn't mean it's the worst
That's not
movie.
what we're looking... Because... there's other movies that had more of a budget to work with.
Right.
And had more advantages. But I think there are some sequences that are actually scary and very dark. But you're right, it's the last 2/3, like when they leave that motorhome. I think that's when the movie is most effective.
Yeah.
They get stuck there for a while, and I guess my arms started to be crossed pretty early, and when I realized it, yes, our originally who we think the anchor of the film is such a misogynistic jerk that does things which make no sense. Like, he's a distracted driver, he causes a major accident, and then for reasons that I cannot possibly understand other than his wounded pride, he gets out of the motorhome, and he starts beating up at the poor guy who's at the side of the road, and then blames him for the accident.
And no matter what this guy does to help them, including like, he will never change his mind on this guy being evil. Like, he just says, this is not my fault. I decide it's his fault, and no matter what happens from this point on, we are enemies. And considering the situation they're faced with, that doesn't track real.
No. That, like, all of that is horrible. Fortunately, and I was hoping for this pretty early on, he doesn't last till the end of the movie.
No.
And it's almost like the movie gets started when he's out of the picture, and when we get away from kind of the scene of the accident.
Yeah.
I guess the criticism, or maybe where I don't have a leg to stand on, is we spend a lot of time in that motorhome, but there's reasons for it. Like, one of one of the his buddy is seriously is dying and getting this medical help from this
stranger.
The stranger, this veteran of the Iraq War.
Richard is the guy that they run into.
Yeah.
And Matt is the main character that we've been complaining about.
Yeah. I'm not crazy about Matt. I think you're right. The acting's all over the place. I kind of zoomed in on the positive side. AJ Cook, who is from Criminal Minds, plays his fiance,
and they're trying to like do this reveal that she's pregnant, but it's pretty fucking obvious.
And it's like a sitcom where they always get interrupted when she's about to reveal it. Actually, I think to the film's credit, he never knew.
Yeah,
this guy never knew that he was to be a father.
Yeah.
But the payoff to that pregnancy and what happens with the alien abduction is brutal.
Yeah.
It is brutal. They do not, hold back. And that's the section of the film I really admire. I also, from scene to scene, it's a little bit, the actor who played the Iraq vet, sometimes he plays things a little bit big.
Right.
But he's never boring, and he's not a jerk.
I think he gave the best performance, but I think he also had the most to do.
He had a lot to do. There's points when he, because he's so calm dealing with the medical situation, but he comes in like a raving lunatic after
just got the shit kicked out of him.
Yeah. Well, no. But I'm talking about like after they go in the woods and he may have shot a character that I was wanting to die or not, but he starts talking about aliens and like this was not the way to. These people weren't quite sure about him to begin with, and like the girl who was into him suddenly turns against him in that scene.
You just disappeared into the woods with a guy who beat you up. Gunshots were heard. You came running out of the woods covered in blood, saying, "Aliens, aliens!" Yes,
aliens. Your brother is dead.
What caused the accident, though? They saw these weird lights in the sky, and they were looking at the lights when the accident happened.
Yes.
So there is some setup for that story too.
Yes, and I like the sister too, like the potential love interest that never kind of came to be, but when it comes down to like the two characters towards the end and they end up in that cabin, I don't think the first scene is necessary at all, where we have this false idea of what that scene's going to be. It was like the casino scene, or that I remember you criticized.
She's being chased by the alien, but she's being tricked again by the aliens, and again that's not handled well.
Just start it with the RV and the accident instead. Why
they're getting in our heads? They're making us see things. It's not handled well, angle of it.
But not as good as Fire in the Sky. But the sequences on the alien ship, for a micro budget film,
the special effects went up about 2,000%.
I don't know. If that's where their money went, that was money well spent, because the third act of the film is horrifying, and it worked for me. I'm not sure I needed the Carrie-like moment at the end of the film, which was so predictable. I could see it coming a mile away, but I thought where we started and where we got to. It was like while I was watching the movie, my expectations lowered to a point that was so low that I didn't think there was any redeeming qualities in this film. And when it like picked up its socks in the last 2/3, it's like I really enjoyed that movie. I think I enjoyed that movie more than some movies I'm supposed to like more than this one.
Right. Well,
that's why this has been a confusing rank for me.
I definitely stand by that it gets better the deeper into the movie you go. My reason for being torn on how to recommend it is that it goes from so not good to actually really decent, but it's really not good at the start. It's solidly not good. So I think it requires a patient viewer. I think if you're into alien abduction movies, this is an obscure one too. Like I say, it came and went. If you can get your hands on it and it's something that interests you, for sure. General audiences sitting down to watch a movie, I don't think a lot of them would make it to the good part of the movie. That sucks to say out loud,
I know,
but I
know.
really do feel that way. There's a few movies like that. I have a guilty pleasure shark movie called Bait.
Mm-hmm.
The opening kill in that movie is so bad that I would understand someone not sitting through the rest of the movie. But once the movie actually kicks in, it becomes a fun shark movie, you know? Sometimes you just need to give a movie a chance. And so, yeah, give the movie a chance, but I'm not confident about the recommendation.
I own Bait, by the way.
Nice.
yeah. So.
You know, it's not going to change your life, Jason, but it's a fun movie.
Yes. And same with this one.
Exactly.
I don't know. I think I actually like it more than you do.
Right.
And I'm normally the one that's being hard on micro-budget films.
I'm glad, because I really kind of thought you were like, Jesus, Larry, why are you making me watch this? Was possible. I mean, I'm not assuming that I know how you're going to respond to a movie, but I thought it was possible. Like, and I always wanted to discuss it for the list. Like, it's in the conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm not the one to dismiss a micro-budget movie, but I made one.
Yes. Your movie's better than this one.
Yeah, well, thank you. But I think that having that perspective on it...
Like, your movie is, like, it's good in all 3 acts. This one is good in 2 of the 3 acts.
That's right.
Unfortunately, the first act, where you really have to hook a viewer, is the worst part.
And that's crucial.
Yeah.
Yeah. Give it a chance.
Give it a chance, and I don't know, what did you think of A.J. Cook? I mean...
I didn't know her from the TV show or whatever. I thought my problem was less about the acting than about the writing for her.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. When she's like a forced abortion is basically put upon her by these aliens. She's lost her fiance. She's lost all of her friends. She's on the spaceship, and she begs this guy to shoot her. Like, I didn't think that's where this movie was going. So
no. Oh, what a brutal scene. Oh.
I liked it for that, but you're right about the Carrie scare at the ending. I don't think they fooled anyone with that either.
Yeah.
But again, it overperformed in the third act, doubtlessly.
The entire movie overperformed for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know.
I'm happy. This makes me happy.
Yeah, I'm going to try to think who I can recommend it to. Beckman, maybe? I don't know.
Beckman!
Can you state your name for the camera?
Dr. Abigail Tyler.
Okay, where would you like to begin?
I am actress Mila Jovovich, and I will be portraying Dr. Abigail Tyler. This film is a dramatization of events that occurred October 2000. Every scene in this movie is supported by archived footage. Some of what you're about to see is extremely disturbing.
I wake up in the middle of the night almost every night.
And there's nothing unusual waking you up.
There's one thing. There's an owl at my window.
An owl?
Nice eyes, you pig.
A white owl, just looking at me. Had you ever seen it before? Tommy?
When I was a kid, just staring at me.
I've seen it a lot.
Every night this week.
4, 3, 2. Tell me about the owl.
Doesn't look like a normal owl.
There's no owl. It's not an owl.
That voice is speaking Sumerian, the oldest language in human history. You can go into any Sumerian exhibit and see etchings and sculptures of men in spacesuits and oxygen masks. Rockets that look like Apollo.
Do you believe in abduction theories?
You don't mean alien abductions, do you?
There was more fear in his eyes than I've ever seen in my life. What's wrong?
There are more missing people in Nome than any other town in Alaska.
I have to get this out of my head because it's dug in there and I can't think straight.
All right, the fourth kind is an interesting number. It's the director. I'm going to make an attempt. Olatunde Osunsanmi.
That's as good as better than I could try. Yeah.
I apologize to anyone out there who knows how that's exactly supposed to be pronounced, but there it is. He's kind of taking an every approach at once to this. It's supposedly based on true events that happened in Nome, Alaska, although anybody involved in the cases hates the movie. And not to start off on the wrong foot, but I hate this movie. I think it's like... I don't know. It's one of these ones where I don't even know where to start. because it's on a subject that I find really interesting in Alien Abduction, because it's based on a true story, and because it's plugged full of people who I have a lot of respect for. I love Elias Koteas. I love Will Patton.
Yeah.
Rock solid supporting actors, and they're good in the movie. But the movie is like consciously, almost every other scene, deliberately taking you out of the movie.
Yes.
Like, they set it up, and Mila Jovovich, as I've always called her, comes up and introduces herself, says, I'm going to be playing this character. And then we're going to also have this footage of a different actress playing the, quote, real character being interviewed. And then we're going to, like, not just show you this scene, we're going to show you, you know, our reenactment plus the, quote, air quotes, real footage, which is all fake, or these real audio recordings, which is all fake. And they're just constantly, when they introduce the sheriff, Sheriff August, Will Patton, they say Will Patton as Sheriff August. This is over a half an hour into the movie. And it's like, yeah, thank you. I mean, it's not that I didn't know that was Will Patton, but it jars me out of the movie. I find the presentation of the movie so distracting that no matter how interesting individual beats and scenes are, the movie is constantly cutting its own throat. It takes any tension out of the movie. It takes any reality out of the movie, which is weird because that's exactly what they're going for, is like to make this feel as real as possible. But the reenactments don't work. The fake interviews, I guess, maybe have their moments here and there because of like the weird gauntness of performance, but like I was so consistently taken out of the movie that I ended up being irritated by it. And like at times I feel like if it was handled just slightly better, this could be like at least in the neighborhood of the Mothman prophecies we talked about for the naughties list. It didn't make my list, but I really liked the vibe of it. I really liked how I got to know this community, and I really got to like it sinks into my nerves.
Speaking of Will Patton, I mean, you know,
same thing,
very effective performance in that movie.
And this movie could have, and frankly fucking should have been that. And because it's so far from being that, like, I give it a lower grade maybe than it deserves. But it shook me off early, and I was never able to climb back on, you know? So, yeah. The basic story is Mila Jovovich is playing Abby Tyler, who's a psychiatrist who notices a lot of her clients are having very bizarre similarities in their visions, dreams, hallucinations, whatever. And sometimes involving a large owl hanging outside their window. Again, huge Mothman Prophecies vibes. But the approach to the storytelling completely undoes it for me. To the point where at some point I just throw up my hands and wait for the thing to be fucking over. So that's my opening unfriendly salvo on the forecast. The weird thing is that there are people who love this movie. I've heard people say they think this movie is terrifying, and I find those cheesy documentaries that you can watch on the History Channel or whatever, they can be diverting and amusing, but dismissible. And this is 3 or 4 tiers below that. So
you'd rather watch the Alien Autopsy on Fox or whatever.
I would. It's somehow weirdly more honest.
But
that's I mean, is that fair? I mean,
I think it's fair, and I totally get where you're coming from with this. Have you ever seen a movie like this?
Well, it's not found footage. It's not really reenactment. I guess. I mean, it seems closer to, like I say, one of those faux documentaries you'd see on TV with reenactments in it, or that mountaineering documentary, Touching the Void.
Yes.
Where they have the actual people who survived being interviewed, but they also have really cool reenactments to help involve you with the story. But I guess I haven't seen it packaged as a movie, but I guess I've seen variations of this.
I mean, this is the one where I'm torn this time around, because when I first saw it, right time, right place, I don't know if this was kind of like my paranormal activity experience or whatever, where I saw it late at night. I saw it alone. it genuinely scared me.
Okay.
The first time I saw it, not this time.
Right.
First time I saw it, scared me. I thought, the reenactments and then the real footage, and I didn't do enough research to see how fake the real footage was. Maybe you have, but I
nobody who were involved in the incidents in Nome, Alaska, will say anything nice about this movie.
No.
I think that's
it looks bad for their town.
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand.
Also,
that.
fun fact, and this is a minor thing, and I'm not trying to be all woke or whatever. Nome, Alaska is 50% native, just for the record. But it's not reflected in
not
this
reflected.
movie.
Not reflected at all. The representation is wrong, but
yeah.
The Mila Jokovich's doppelganger there, the real psychiatrist, looks very scary.
Yeah.
And somehow that kind of worked for me the first time, and even a little bit this time.
She's a good actress, and she looks right for the part.
Yeah.
But I don't like how they present her as authentic footage, because it's not.
Yes.
It's just another actor.
Because it was just another and all of that's very well performed, and I guess I kind of bought it because I wasn't researching this enough to see, but there were some bits where at convenient moments, then the camera kind of goes out, which supposedly is when the aliens are messing with the technology. Right. I'm like, I don't buy any of that for a second, but some of the images that would be kind of startling would happen, and it was kind of like again, closer to a demon possession type of a movie in those scenes, and those worked for me again the first time I saw it. So I guess if it was based on the first time I watched it, this may be towards the top of the list. Believe it or not.
Okay, that's fine. I know I'm
but this time around, I was more my take on it and what happened to this. And I have sympathy for this poor woman. Is I think the suicide of her husband was a traumatic event, and sure, she's a psychiatrist, but it's tough to diagnose yourself or your kids or whatever.
And that gets compounded.
And that so then she went into this alternate reality with what she thinks happened.
Yeah.
And then was kind of pushing this on to what she was seeing with some of her clients, which I don't buy a lot of that went on. Also, just knowing a bit now, as a counselor, not a psychiatrist like she is, but as a counselor, there are so many ethical things that she does wrong. There's that scene kind of early on. Elias Koteas gives the best performance in the film, I think.
I love Elias Koteas.
I think this was a better than average Mila Jokovic performance, because sometimes
she's flat.
I loved her in Fifth Element,
sure, and
I keep waiting for something that great to happen again. This was the closest, I would say, in my opinion. But Elias Koteas is the best one. Will Patton is a bit over the top in places. He's screaming and yelling, but he's probably trying to overcompensate for this screenplay in this movie that he's in. But I think the other piece is she should not have been seeing patients. And there's that scene where she should be going on sabbatical. That's absolutely what should have happened. We don't have a movie, I guess, if that happens. She goes on sabbatical and gets the help that she needs. But then it all becomes this, made-up documentary about alien abductions, and we're left to question things. And we bring in, as often happens with these movies, kind of this expert in ancient languages in the kind of late in the second act of the film. Yeah. And that's another one where he shows up, and we're probably an hour in, and then they mention the actor's name is playing this, and none of them have the real names that their characters actually were.
The subterfuge isn't necessary.
No,
you don't need to do that.
Can we just do I like this a lot more than Communion, but could we just tell the story? as Communion did.
If you must do this casting call, just get it out of the way at the beginning. Like, I hate that it feels like the credits are running through the entire movie.
Yeah. It was just, this is when this character is introduced. But yeah, it suffers from over-direction.
Particularly with things like the sheriff, the Will Patton characters. They didn't use a real name. He's not based on any one real character because they couldn't do that, honestly.
No.
So what's the point of the subterfuge at all?
They would have been sued, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think it's just this woman is the only... Yeah. And not the person who was playing her. But I guess the other thing was that in its favor... I don't think I've seen a movie like this. And to me, it feels in some ways like a giant swing. And it might be a miss, but it's a giant swing for the fences because I don't remember ever seeing a movie like this. But I agree, there's some scenes where, I have an example here, where when they switch out of supposed like the real footage, it really... the scene with the husband and wife, where he has the gun to his wife's head, that gets totally any dramatic tension. Everything gets completely thrown by the wayside because of these visual choices this director is making. That kind of we need to prove that this really happened or whatever.
I think the whole handling of that scene was misguided.
It was
again. Seeing one family slaughter would be enough. Now we get to see two family slaughters simultaneously.
Yeah.
And both of them are fake. Like, there's nothing real. Again, and you're not going to convince us as an audience that we're going to watch the snuff film. Like, that would be an okay thing to show us. Nor is the reaction to it. Like, everyone's punishing the psychiatrist for that. That wouldn't happen. But I do believe on top of her husband's suicide, the fact that her patient... went home and killed his family and himself would weigh on her pretty fucking heavily, and it's acknowledged, but it's not really taken that seriously.
And she's being supervised by Elias Koteas, but there's stuff that he would never like. This idea, and hypnotism is used. It's used in Communion as well.
Yep.
This is just there's so many violations of any kind of patient-client. Like you have a duty to keep your clients or your patients safe, and she completely disregards that.
Yeah.
Throughout, like she would be if this was accurate to what this woman did, and my excuse I'm going is that she suffered a trauma and now she's just not a safe person to be handling people who are in treatment and in care.
She needs to treat herself. She
needs to be healthy herself. But the fact that others go along with it, I'm just not buying a lot of that stuff. And as we talk about it, and
that's so important to the movie because it's so grounded in its own reality that the second you start not buying any one piece of it, it all starts to tip over.
Yeah, I just remember hearing about. I think it was on like a Roper and Ebert review, and I thought, "Oh, this looks like a fascinating." Film. I believe their thumbs were firmly down on it, but I thought, well, this looks like it's something that's different. I haven't seen anything, and to this day, I still haven't seen anything quite like it. But whether it works or not,
approach might have worked if this was like a serial killer or something, and it was a psychiatrist that suspected one of her patients, but. Couldn't violate privilege or for whatever reason ended up solving the case herself, and this was a recreation of that. But I think because we're asked to swallow so many huge pills, this faux reality is unsustainable. Plus the obviousness with which, for me, like that they credit the actors in the reenacted sequences, but not in the quote real sequences.
Yes.
But they're all reenacted sequences, right?
Yeah.
And that's just in the back of my brain the whole time, and just like it undermines the entire movie. And the thing is that I went in wanting this to be good. Like I wanted this to be like, this is the interesting thing. But
I also feel like they're preaching at us.
Oh yeah.
The end, like way too much. Like the end is like, well. Decide what you want, but you've got to acknowledge
something happened.
Something happened here. Yeah,
and you can get meta in ways that are amusing. About the 5th or 6th time I saw the movie Scream, there's a scene where Jamie Kennedy, our good friend, is watching Jamie Lee Curtis on the screen, and he's yelling at Jamie, not the character Laurie Strode, but Jamie Lee Curtis. Jamie, look out, he's behind you. And behind Jamie, Kennedy is the Ghostface killer. So he's yelling, Jamie, look behind you, and this is all meta and hilarious, and it works in the context of Scream. In this movie, when the actual director of the movie is interviewing Mila Jovovich at the end of the movie, I wanted to fucking throw something at the TV.
Yes.
Like, fuck off.
Yes.
Seriously, fuck off.
Yeah.
And when I get mad at a movie,
I know.
I'm not going to get scared by it.
And it doesn't happen often, by the way.
It doesn't. But, like, it totally destroyed any atmosphere the movie was creating, and I couldn't engage with it. I acknowledge that some people have. So, like, if you're really curious to check out The Fourth Kind, I guess check it out. I really didn't like it.
Yeah, I know. Again, I feel like I end up going to the same place. Judge for yourself. But, yeah, I think you're almost convincing me to change my thumb from up to down.
You're allowed to like it.
At least I'm in kind of wavering because I don't think it's diminishing returns
for sure
from the first viewing to the second viewing. If for some reason I don't own this movie, if for some reason I ended up watching it for a third time for some reason, I wonder if I would get to where you are. How many times have you watched this?
I'll say this was my third. I think I watched like about 2/3 of it the first time, and I gave up. Like I was like pissed off, but I thought I wanted to go back to it. Yeah. So I've watched it like 2.5 times.
Okay.
Maybe. But also, I'm pretty convinced of like it's not going to change my mind at this point.
Yeah. No, I don't think I don't think more viewings is going to help this. It's probably going to make things worse. So. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Vibrations coming from 3 different directions flew into your house. It's as if something was drawing them to your home.
Something's going on.
What are we talking about?
I don't know. I can't explain it. Sammy, come here. Let me take a look at you.
The marks on your son's body appear to have been applied with a brand.
There are people who have reported experiencing the same things that we have been experiencing. I found a guy who claims to be an expert on this stuff.
Have you experienced any unexplained illnesses or blackouts?
Daniel? Why aren't you answering me? Daniel!
Feeling that you might not be in control of your own body?
There's something wrong with you people!
You cannot escape them. Sooner or later, when they're ready, they will take your family.
Do not open this door under any circumstance.
Leave us alone!
So, as you've talked about, we bring baggage to movies, and our reaction to a movie can be related to our headspace or our experience of that said movie. I mentioned it with Communion, like... I was terrified because I was 8 when I first saw it, and part of me can't shake the impression that first one made. When I came to see Dark Skies, there was a lot of hits against it. Came out of the Blumhouse, and like they'd been releasing hit horror movie after hit horror movie, and this is the one that just bombed. That like no one watched it, and the people who did said, it's very forgettable. So lower expectations might happen. This is also from the director of Priest and Legion. If you don't remember either of those movies, that's appropriate. Like, there wasn't a lot... it's not...
We got happy, Larry, for the end of these reviews.
Well, I'm actually going to start saying really nice things.
Oh, I know you will,
Like,
I didn't know it's a build-up.
There was reason to be skeptical coming into this movie, is what I'm trying to say. Like, and I think that the director, Scott Stewart, raised his game here in that it's not just the special effects extravaganza. The special effects aren't doing all the work. The atmosphere is doing a lot of the work, and the cast is doing a lot of the work. In a way, this is like a full bar improvement on his previous films. Due respect to fans of Legion and Priest. It's familiar in that, we have it reminded me like of the remake of Poltergeist. So like the family's not doing particularly well.
Yeah.
The husband's desperate for a job. Kerry Russell's working in real estate, which is a stressful profession, and there's weirdness happening with the kids at home and these frights at night. But it grounds the characters in a more relatable world.
Yes.
A lot of the times in the like Hollywood presentations, they're living the perfect life, the perfect family in a mansion. You know, like they're just living the perfect life. There's a lot of problems on board before the shit starts hitting the fan in this movie, and I appreciated the patience to help set that up. And I wondered if that wasn't the thing that kind of kicked people off the movie. I also have a soft spot for Josh Hamilton. He's in one of the earliest and still, I think, one of the best Noah Baumbach movies called Kicking and Screaming. And he doesn't get used as often as I would like to.
He's in The Walking Dead, I think.
He had a very brief
Yeah.
tenure in The Walking Dead, towards the end of The Walking Dead. But yes, and I think he's decent. Again, he's one of these actors that I think is waiting to be discovered because, like, I like him. And that helped me get into the movie too. J.K. Simmons, of course, is always a welcome presence in these movies.
Yeah.
And much like Francis Sternhagen in Communion, you need someone that good to sell something this crazy.
Yes.
And kudos for that. So I have to say, when I first watched this movie, I was like, why did everybody hate Dark Sky so much? It's not amazing. It's not going to change the scape of cinema, but like, what was the problem? And I'm wondering if it's not the quote-unquote twist of the movie. Again, I have this bad habit of jumping right to the end of the movie, but the whole movie, it's set up that they're after the littlest boy in the household. Like, he has the most direct encounters, it seems, with the aliens, and he's trying to warn them about the Sandman and everything like that before things go south. And I hate to jump right to the spoilers, but just to help defend my position.
And a lot of people haven't seen it, so
Yeah.
maybe stop, watch the movie, give it a chance, and then come back to us.
But it's the aliens are after a different kid. The older brother is the target, and I don't know if that's enough of a quote twist to anchor the movie on. Like, it doesn't really change significantly the lead into it. Like, it's just a little
It seems like a half M. Night Shyamalan type of idea, but
the aliens showing up and just taking that kid wouldn't be enough.
No.
But the switcheroo maybe wasn't either.
We always need to have a gotcha in horror movies. Still, really, I mean,
But if I look at it by its component parts, like, were there suspenseful scenes of people walking through their house? Were there scenes where they were convincingly affecting paranoia? Like, we knew it was going to be aliens, but if you started this movie not knowing it was going to be aliens, would you be more involved in the solving of this mystery? I have to say, like, again, it's not a 10-star movie by any measure, but it did not deserve to be dismissed. And it was dismissed. And this is what I love to do on Rank and Review, is find movies that have been forgotten or dismissed and say, give this one another day in court. And I am saying give Dark Skies another day in court. It is another alien abduction movie. It doesn't necessarily distinguish itself that highly even on this list, but it does not suck, and that does seem to be its reputation, and I disagree. I think it's pretty decent.
Yeah, it's funny how this is my first time seeing it, but it was one of the things that attracted me to this list.
Oh, really?
Because I remember seeing the coming attraction. Yeah, I saw the coming attraction. I don't know what movie I went to, and it looked scary. It looked freaky, and there was the scene I remember is the business where Kerry Russell has that moment where she's in the middle of trying to sell this house, and she's making progress at long last, trying to sell this house which has been on the market forever, and then she tunes out, and then she goes to that window and she started banging
her face
against the window, and then I was just like, that is, and she's such a good actor. I mean, she's having a really creative time of it right now. Like, Antlers was terrific, but she anchors Cocaine Bear, which to this point of we're recording is my favorite movie of the year.
Oh, wow.
And I was just like, this is like Felicity. I think some people labeled her as just all serious or whatever, but she's a very good actor and a very versatile actor. And I'm learning that more and more. And this was kind of before the Americans, and she kind of, people started to pay attention to her again. I was like, oh, I want to see that because she's in it too. It certainly didn't live up to what I thought it would be, but it's a good movie. I agree with you, and I don't understand it being a bad movie. I think they really nail the suburbs.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly it. And you have these behind closed doors, these people who cannot afford to live in the houses that they're in and are going like paycheck to paycheck or less. And they're trying to keep up with the Joneses, because on the outside everybody's having this perfect, and it's summertime and they're having the barbecues and all that stuff. But
Lacey really needs to sell that house, and Daniel really needs to get
a job. And early on, he lies to his wife about
how well
a job interview that goes bad. Like we've seen, there were a lot of things that were very familiar. I don't think there was anything that was that original. Even the J.K. Simmons character, they just happened to get a great actor in that role. I think in somebody else's hands, it would be a little bit too...
That kind of exposition is tough to sell. That's why, like, for a movie like Sinister, they get Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you need someone who can sell exposition, like, cleanly.
Yeah.
And J.K. Simmons, you just believe him.
And he's got these eccentricities and how he's costumed, and what was the thing with the animals there? He has cats or something. Or,
he says they don't like cats or something.
Yeah, I don't like, but yeah, I think, this is just like all the ones I had. I have bits that I really liked, and then I had bits that I wasn't crazy about. Again, that the youngest kid, I feel like I'm being so mean to child actors. Oh,
the bar was set pretty low from Communion, so I was willing to give him a bit more of a pass.
I think they were kind of equal, actually. And I don't know. I don't remember being quite as... I think they were both not great, and that's where the child actor in Close Encounters, which was the last one I saw, prepare for this, was a breath of fresh air.
Right.
Because, and again, I can't get over, he's younger than these other actors, but
I think it's a difference between finessing a performance and actually getting a kid to read lines or parrot lines.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, like, just off camera, the parents will say the line and the kid just repeats it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas Spielberg would be like, I don't know, doing some version of shaking the keys for the kid.
Yes.
So the kid looks up and sees something that makes him smile, but in the context of the shot, it's really eerie that the kid smiles.
Hitchcock used to do that too. He used to, wasn't very nice. He used to like threaten kids' lives if they didn't, and that's where they got those great horrifying
I need
looks.
real tears or I'll make them.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what the greats do. But the older brother was good. I think he did a good job, and it's not like M. Night Shyamalan where I'm like, oh my god. And there's a real, his career's come back big time. I haven't watched the newest movie yet, but some of his movies in between, I was like, oh no, like they don't all have to have a twist, and these are some of these are just bad. This isn't one where I was like, of course it has to have a twist. Just because it's that type of a movie, but I can sort of understand it because they were playing around with that idea because they spend a lot of time with that older boy.
And there's a scene where he's riding home and the streetlights are blinking out behind him, and you're like, "What's that about?"
Yeah, and those are kind of the suspenseful, freaky things from the coming attraction that really got me excited about this movie before it disappeared and people didn't talk about it for years. I would say, like, again, being pretty picky, like, there's that really annoying friend he has across the street, and I was so excited when his dad went and started beating him up, and I was hoping that kid wouldn't survive till the end of the film, which is a cruel thing to say, but when they go sneak into the house that the mom's trying to sell, and
everything that comes out of that kid's mouth is just awful.
Oh, it's awful. But then the moment where I'm supposed to like the older boy, but essentially he sexually harasses the girl he likes, and then he gets his first kiss as a reward after that.
Well, here's the thing. I found that an uncomfortable scene too. But I didn't exactly hate the kid. I'm not proud of his behavior.
He's awkward. He doesn't know what to do because they've just watched porno movies and that's their idea. So that's the excuse, I guess. But it's just still. Why does she respond to that?
Did you ever do something really cringy and embarrassing and uncomfortable when you were young?
Yes.
Because I think everyone does.
Yes.
And I think the movie does a good job of showing him doing bad things, but letting us sort of let him off the hook because he's a dumb kid, right? Whereas the kid across the street is just a little bit too far.
Yeah.
This guy's just trying to figure shit out. That scene might have taken it a little boob grab might have taken things pretty far, but that is the kind of shit that happens. It's also kind of honest, right?
But I guess my issue in the writing of it or whatever, the girl responds to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the problem there. Not that he did something inappropriate.
To be fair, the movie's not about that.
I'm sorry. I'm just getting.
No.
I'm going down a rabbit hole with that one.
That's true.
That took me out of the movie for a minute, I guess.
But and in retrospect, it makes more sense because at the time you could be asking yourself, especially the first time, why are we spending so much time with the older kid?
It makes sense.
It makes
when
sense.
We get the plot twist, you know. And I think on a rewatch, a fairly recent rewatch of it, I may be seeing more and more that I like about this. It might be less of a 3-star. It might be up a little bit more from where I am. But
well, again, I was complimentary, but I'm not foaming at the mouth.
No.
But I do want to. I feel bad for movies that get just discarded. Like,
well, Fire in the Sky is like that too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a couple decades later.
Lee and I talked about that movie, The Ruins, for the Naughties episode. Again, it's just like, why does nobody talk about that movie?
That's a good movie.
Completely decent.
But it was all
movie.
there were all these The Cave,
The
Descent, The Ruins, and they all look
the same,
very similar. The covers look the same in the marketing departments. I think that's why some of these movies get forgotten about. But I mean,
I just want to measure my enthusiasm.
We just have a bunch of movies that we're talking about that have skies in it.
Yeah, that's
even
right.
like I could see dark skies and night skies getting mixed up for people listening to this. So you know,
so it's neither as great as I was selling it, but nor is it as bad as its reputation, and that's basically my bullet point for the review. It does the job. There's some really great suspenseful sequences. We get to see the psychological deterioration of the family. It's not exactly a happy ending, but the family, what's left of it, is still together. And
big points for that, because it wasn't a Spielbergian happy ending, and it looked like it was going in that direction.
Yeah,
like that was, it has the twist, but then it has. I'm thinking, this is
they
not...
might have been thinking with franchise eyes at the time, because Blumhouse had just been releasing hit after hit. Insidious became a franchise. Sinister almost became a franchise. But they were, it was in that era of Blumhouse being now it's A24, everyone gets excited about, I guess. But at the time, it seemed like they could do no wrong. There was this one, and then there was that Stephen King adaptation with Mercy, I think it was, and that one was deservedly forgotten. I think this one is worth a watch, but don't overpay for it. It's solid.
Yeah, it's not an easy movie to find, I don't think.
No, okay.
But I managed to find all of these. I wasn't sure I could. Initially, when I tried, I couldn't find I couldn't find any of them, including except for Close Encounters. That was the only one I could get my hands on when I first looked at the show. But then
because the government doesn't want you to know about the aliens.
Yeah, well, I guess they took a break. They're busy with other things in the last 2 weeks. So.
Are we good on?
Yeah. I think it's 2 thumbs up.
It is
not enthusiastic, but 2 thumbs up
for sure. All right, that was 6 alien abduction movies reviewed. Thank you very much. I think we covered the waterfront pretty well there.
Yeah.
What was your least favorite of these 6 features and why, Mr.
Yeah, I'm gonna break Larry, 9-year-old Larry's heart, or whatever age you were, but yeah, Communion. I just couldn't get into it. I couldn't get behind it. I was so excited for this one, and maybe it's just some of these I had low expectations, and some I had high expectations, and the cover, I would see it in video stores for years. I was like, that looks like a scary movie, and Christopher Walken looks freaky, and it was just not scary at all. To me, it was just vexing.
Yes.
It looked like they were rehearsing and figuring out what they were going to shoot, but we didn't actually get the A take on it.
All right.
Yeah. So number 5, and I was honest with you. From our conversation, it's
dropped a level.
Yeah. It's changed. 5th, I'm actually going the 4th kind. I think, sometimes the first time you see a movie could be deceptive in the sense that you're wowed by something and it's not really that great. Sometimes when the first time I see a movie, I judge it too much, and then I pick up on it later and it's like, oh, this is way better than I thought. This one's diminishing returns, and I agree. There are a lot of problems. I'm not completely comfortable putting my thumb down on this one, but I'm not excited to revisit it, I guess, because I'm seeing. I think I drank the Kool-Aid the first time.
Okay.
And, I got the Kool-Aid out of my system now. So, all right. So then number 4 is actually going to be Dark Skies.
Okay.
I like it. I don't love it, but I think it's a movie that people should check out. So, what I'm saying is my thumb is up to every movie except for one on this list here. So, but yeah, I think there are better films, and I'm really, really surprised that it went way up to number 3, but maybe it's because, again, it was the opposite of Communion, where the first section of the movie was so bad, I thought it was beyond help, and it was going to be number 6 for sure, and then it redeemed itself in the last 2/3 there. But Night Skies is all the way up in number 3.
Nice.
As micro budget and as bad as as some things are, and character that
it's rough around the edges.
Rough around the edges, and there's a character that I could have done completely without in the film, but fortunately he dies. In the end, I think based on what they had to work with and what the other 5 films had to work with, I'm going to reward this one. Oh. I haven't always done that as a guest on your show, but this time I am. So, this is way closer than I think it should have been. I don't know. One's an established classic. The other one is
more of a cult thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, people are gonna throw things at me, but I this is where I've really changed my mind here. I have to go with this experience preparing for this show in this time. It might be different in 10 years, might be different in 20 years, but second is Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I have to go with my heart, not my head, in this one.
Okay.
Because, and it's a better directed movie, better made movie, but I really enjoyed Fire in the Sky. So it's all the way up to number 1. And nice. I don't know, I thought it was inevitable that Close Encounters was going to be number 1.
Right.
And I almost feel like it should be number 1, but there's something about championing a movie that's been forgotten about. Close Encounters is going to be fine.
Right.
Its legacy is there, but more people need to check out Fire in the Sky. It's a fantastic film. So that's where I am.
I am surprised by the switch at the top of the list.
Yeah.
But it's good because we just went 0 for 6 as a result.
Oh, wow. I thought we'd be 3 of 6 maybe.
Can we call Dog Soldiers and the People versus Larry Flint your prize?
Yeah, sure. Those are pretty good prizes compared to whatever the last time this happened we What did you gave me a VHS of
Chairman of the Board.
Chairman of the Board, a Carrot Top movie. Yeah.
Screener copy. You can't even sell it.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, look, I'm not going to fight with you. I think like we're closer than for me. Almost before I sat down to rewatch the movies, and maybe that's not fair, the top and the bottom were harshly anchored for me. The thing is that I got mad at the fourth kind.
Yeah.
And once you lose your temper with a movie, it's really hard to get back. And I gave it a lot of time. I gave it years.
Yes, I know.
And I came back to it and no, I still think it's a movie that just fundamentally gets in its own way. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
So I know I'm a minority opinion. There's a lot of people that really like that movie.
There could be a remake of this, which is a little bit more under control by a better writer-director that could tell an interesting story.
Yeah.
I love the setting and some of the photography in there. There's
Sure. That's part of the frustration.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much to mine in this, but I feel like it shook me off early. It seems unkind to put Night Skies in 5th place, but I'm putting Night Skies in 5th place because I do think for a lot of casual viewers, the slow start, the rough special effects, and the wonky acting are going to buck you off before you get to the good parts of the movie. But there are good parts to the movie if you're a patient viewer and if you're super into the Alien Abduction. I feel like you're right. They put all of their budget into the last 10 minutes of the movie. But I gotta judge the movie on it front to back, not the last little 10 minutes. I'm not happy about it. Like I said in the review, there's this part of me that's totally cheering for the movie, but it's how I feel.
Yeah.
Right behind that, I'm gonna give it to Dark Skies. And this seems about right. It seems middle of the pack material for me. Like, it's not amazing, but it definitely gets the job done, right? And yeah, don't believe the negative hype on Dark Skies. But all the way in 3rd position, I have Communion. But what I said in the review, I'm going to stand by here. There is something about a movie that traumatizes you when you're a kid, that just locks itself in your brain, that you'll make excuses for, you'll be forgiving of, you'll have affection for, maybe whether or not it's deserved. I will say, if you're a fan of Christopher Walken, the movie is worth watching just for Christopher Walken being Christopher Walken. Like, that. And, the Whitley Strieber Communion thing, this is kind of Cole's Notes of the first book, if you're curious about it. But you gotta sift through a lot of 80s cheese and a lot of cringiness. And I concede it's in the movie, but you said you had to go with your heart, I have to go with my heart.
Yeah.
2nd place is Fire in the Sky. But man, is it ever a solid recommendation. Like, I think that the top 2 are in a different level than the rest of the list. And don't be intimidated by the fact that it's mainly a drama for the first 2/3 of the movie, because it delivers such an epic payoff, and that payoff wouldn't be there if not for the strength of the first 2/3.
I think there's some exciting things that happen in the first 2/3 as well.
But, it's true, but that's the reputation of the movie.
If you're looking for aliens in the first 2 scenes, you're not going to get them. So,
is it a cop-out to just default Close Encounters to number 1? Like I said, like when I started the list, this was
I don't think
a pretty safe one. For as much as, and I do this a lot when it's a director I love, I just focus on the things that seemed off and weird to me. But the thing is, despite everything I said, it kind of does work wall for wall for me. Even him shoveling dirt into the living room. I know what the movie's doing. I get what they're going for. It may be not the most credible scene in the movie, but I mean, this is a scene where we see all these planes show up landing after gone missing in World War II. We accept a lot of crazy shit at face value in the movie. But I go back to Spielberg's Awe. I remember Siskel and Ebert were reviewing the sequel to Jurassic Park, the Lost World, and his big bitch Ebert was like, "Where's the awe? Why aren't the characters at least impressed by these dinosaurs?" And maybe or not, he forgot it in the Lost World, but he didn't forget that here. From the very beginning of the movie, where crowds of people pointing their fingers to the sky, from the crowds of people converging to worship, and the sort of worldscape Like, until maybe Contact, we didn't have a movie that seriously tackled how the world might react to First Contact. And it just ignited my imagination. I saw it at a very young age. I've seen it quite a few times. I don't know exactly how many, but I feel like I get a little something different out of it each time. And even if it's a little bit negative, even as an adult, I agree with Spielberg. I don't appreciate him abandoning his family, or at least not without something on his face that says, like, I can't believe I'm doing this. It seems like he doesn't question it at all. But what I don't question at all is that this is a highly influential science fiction movie that people are going to be talking about way longer than we're alive. So
that's true. And I mean, I feel like I know there's a guest you once had, I forget the name, that put The Exorcist as number 2.
Right.
And I feel like I'm doing that with Close Encounters here in some ways.
It's supposed to be number 1. You're allowed to make your own list.
Yeah, I don't know. I just, on this day, like, it was right up until just before it came out of my mouth.
Right.
So I'm probably going to be conflicted with this because it's recorded forever now. But couple things. One thing not to review it again, but why does Richard Dreyfuss need to kiss Melinda Dillon on the mountain there towards the end? Like,
I didn't feel like it was
there's no romantic connection between them.
I don't feel it's romantic. I feel like they were just on this adventure together, and they understood what was happening. They knew that it was real and that they weren't crazy, and that nobody around them. The deeper into the movie, once they find the installation and the military basically invite them to join them, then it's all off the board. But they were kind of alone until then. They only had each other, and seeing the confirmation they're not crazy. She's gonna get her. Well, I guess she doesn't know she's gonna get her kid back. I'm trying to remember the order of it now. Anyway, I saw it as like a celebratory thing. Like he would grab someone by their cheeks and kiss them on the face.
But this was full on the lips. I mean, I don't. Anyway.
But that's how I interpreted it.
Yeah,
like, I didn't
enough.
see it it didn't feel like a romantic thing, even though it was a kind of passionate kiss. I don't know.
Also, just unless I'm mistaken, was your number 4? Your number 4 was Dark Skies?
1, 2, Dark Skies. Yeah, so we didn't go 0 for 6?
I think we went 1 for 6.
All right, take the movies back. No, just kidding. Damn it, I did it again. I thought we went 0 for 6 there. Oh well.
Yeah, I was just because I switched mine along. I'm just making sure that I'm right about that. But for the sake of honesty, I don't want somebody who's listening to this shouting.
For the record,
lies.
We did not completely disagree.
We were actually in sync with nobody was raising their voices for this one, but anyway.
No fighting. Fighting. You son of a bitch. Everybody who is listening to Rank and Review right now, please offer your ears unto the Shelf Shedding Movie Show, hosted by Mr. Jason Dubray. And I'm sure we'll be hearing from him again.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get you back on there sometime soon. Thanks so much.
Ooh. And so it was. We got to the end of this Alien Abduction edition of Rank and Review. 226 is in the rear view mirror. What did you think? Did we rank them reasonably? Who do you agree with more? Myself, Jason? Send your feedback to ranknreview@gmail.com. That's ranknreview@gmail.com. Check out my website at ranknreview.ca because I'm up here in Canada. And do support Jason Dubray's podcast, The Shelf Shedding Movie Show, because it's good and it's worthy of your ears. So treat them. Rank and Review will be dropping every other Wednesday. This is the first episode of the 10th season, so I try to do 25 of these per season. 1 down, 24 to go. Thank you so much for your ears. This is your host and random Canadian, Larry Parsons, saying, I appreciate you.